Good evening, producer Susan. You and your dog staying cool?
We are. The heat has finally broken and the humidity is down, so life's pretty good right now.
And we talked about relative humidity last week and the difference between wet bulb and dry bulb and relative. Has your relative humidity gone down as well?
The relative humidity has gone down. It feels like it might be about 50% right now,
Well,
which
fantastic.
oh, I was right. It's actually 49%. I'm good.
Well, very, very good. All right. Well, good. So we got some nice, tolerable weather. And have you taken your dog swimming? I know you told me he likes to swim.
Yes, we go regularly on the weekends, but I do want to caution our viewers, it is that time of year where blue green algae spores are prevalent in lakes and ponds, so you really need to be careful where you take your pup swimming because it will kill them in under 30 minutes.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a great piece of advice for dog owners out there. And I know a lot of our listeners are dog owners. All right. You want to hear what we're going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, what do we have on the agenda?
All right. Well, today is October 1st, Tuesday, October 1st. Again, it's the situation. It's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. Our quote of the week is from the late management author Peter Drucker on the difference between efficient and being effective. You ever heard of Peter Drucker?
Is he from that show? Who is he? Why do I
No,
know
but
that name?
he died like 20 years ago, but he's one of the all-time greatest management authors. He's probably written 14 books. He is kind of the all-time guru. And he
Okay,
had a
that's
great,
not who I was thinking of then.
all right, great quote on the difference between being efficient versus being effective. And our stupidest thing I've heard all week segment, have you heard about some people that have been gluing their hands to to runways and tarmac and access roads to airports?
No, why?
I will tell you where it's happening and why they're doing it. They're literally gluing their hands to the pavement. Um, we'll tell you about a couple of new massive, and I mean massive, solar power farms that have been brought online in California and what those new sources of electricity have done to the cost of electricity in that state. Now, you would assume since solar power is free, it would make the electric rates in California, go way, way down, right?
Yeah.
Well, we'll tell you what actually happened. Um, have you ever placed an order with Amazon at 10 o'clock in the morning and gotten it the same afternoon?
Well, I'm not that fortunate only because I don't live in a metropolitan area, but if I place it one day, I can often get it the very next day.
Well, we'll tell you about an amazing statistic uh, that comes from Amazon, and that tells you how long it takes from the time you hit the buy button, you hit the enter key, how much time goes by before your order is in a box with a label on it, ready to be picked up by a driver. You'll be stunned. Um, in a story you didn't hear on TV, we'll tell you about a Supreme Court justice who cited a fake study in her dissenting opinion. Talk about embarrassing your Supreme Court justice with law clerks available to you, and you get fooled into citing a fake study in a brief in a Supreme Court opinion. We'll tell you about how legislators and governors in California and Massachusetts are dealing with the issue of declining populations and tax revenues. You would think that they would be looking at cost cutting, but apparently that's not what they want to do. We'll tell you about an Airbnb rental owner who was spying on his guests with hidden cameras. Did you hear that story?
I haven't maybe heard the story you're speaking of, but I hear that's a prevalent situation. You need to be careful.
This one is really, really gross. And our taxpayer relief shot from San Antonio, Texas, where a man was trying to recover his stolen truck, shoots and kills the car thief, actually a truck thief, who actually shot at him first. So that's going to be a classic taxpayer relief shot. Anyway, anything you think we should cover besides that?
That sounds like a lot, but the very first thing you said was that today is August 1st, and that just blows me away. Where has summer gone?
Where has summer gone? We got a month left before Labor Day. All right. Anyway, Peter Drucker is probably the most respected management guru of all times. And I love this quote. And he said, the difference between being efficient and effective is that efficient is doing things right, whereas effective is doing the right things. I see too many people spending money to automate and streamline stuff that shouldn't be done at all. I'd rather be doing effective things, not quite as efficiently, as opposed to doing things that shouldn't be done at all efficiently. Have you ever seen examples of that?
Yeah, I see it all the time in work that people are trying to make things easier, but by the time they figure it all out, it's like, I could have just done it myself.
Right. By the way, in business, it's very common to see a CEO issue an edict mandating that all departments cut their costs by 5% or 10%, instead of examining what each department does and then deciding if that function actually needs to be done at all. And here's an example. This goes back 20 years. You've heard of Mazda, the auto car company?
Yep.
When Mazda first came to the United States back in the 80s, Ford was their partner. They were a partner with Mazda. And the CFO of Ford said, he was responsible for the accounts payable group. And he said, we've got 400 people working accounts payable. And I think I can knock that down by 25%. I want to go from 400 to 300. And I understand that Mazda's got some pretty creative ways to do accounts payable. So why don't we schedule a visit with our partners over at Mazda and see how they do accounts payable? So they get their team together. And they tell Mazda, look, we want to come and talk to your accounting people and see how you process accounts payable. So they get there and they meet the plant manager, and they said, okay, well, great. Can we go see your accounts payable group? Now, Mazda was only about 20% the size of Ford. So they figured there'd be, 80, 90 people there. Well, the plant manager takes them to this room and there's like 14 people in it. And the plant manager explains what they do here. And the CFO of Ford figures, well, we're in the wrong place because obviously there's got to be more than these 14 people. And the CFO from Ford said, well, that's great. That's great. But now can you take us where you do the rest of the processing? And the plant manager says, what do you mean the rest of the processing? He says, the three-part match. And three-part match in accounts payable is typically where you match the purchase order with the receiving, the shipping, the bill of lading from the shipping dock, and the vendor invoice. You match those three and make sure that what you ordered is what you got and is what you're being billed for. And the plant manager says, oh, well, we don't do that here. And the CFO said, well, I can see that because you don't have enough people. Can you take us to the room where you do that? And the plant manager says, no, you don't understand. We don't do that anywhere. And the CFO says, what do you mean you don't do it anywhere? And the plant manager says, we tell our vendors, please don't send us your invoices because we don't want them. It messes things up. He said, we tell our vendors, like, if you're going to supply us with axles every month, we know how many automobiles we produce, and we're pretty sure we don't build any cars without an axle. And at the end of every month, we will send you a check for the number of axles we use to build our cars. And we do that with screws. We do that with headlights. And they said, they told their vendors, we don't want your invoices. They just mess things up. Mm-hmm. And that kind of blew the CFO away. So that's an example of, rather than do things efficiently, rather than do the three-part match efficiently, don't do it at all. And by the way, Ford did adopt that thing with a lot of things now with Ford and other car companies. They simply pay their vendors on what they use versus what they're shipped. Have you ever heard that story before?
Yeah. No, I'm not that particular story, but no, that's a great example.
A great example. Yeah. Please don't send us your paper. We don't want your paper. We will pay you for what we use. Because in factories now, it's very common for vendors to take responsibility for keeping the shelves and the bins in the factory stocked. In other words, if you're supplying wheel bearings, you have somebody from your organization, you're the wheel bearing supplier, you send somebody to that factory once a week or more frequently to make sure that there's always a good supply of wheel bearings on the shelf. And at the end of the month, that company will send you a check for the number of wheel bearings they used. And that's how it works. All right. So you want to move on to people gluing their hands to the pavement?
Yeah. What's that about?
All right. Well, last week, climate protesters in Germany were gluing their hands to both the access roads and in some cases, the tarmac where the planes park. They actually, there's these doors in the airport concourse. Now, they're alarmed that if you push the bar, the alarm goes off, but you can get out on the tarmac. Well, they were going out on the tarmac with this fast-drying epoxy glue, and they were literally gluing their hands to the access road, which prevented traffic from getting to the terminal building. And then they were going out on the tarmac, gluing their hands to the tarmac, preventing the planes from departing the gates or coming into the gates, literally shutting down the airports. And this was to protest climate change. And the quick setting glue was so powerful, they had to get people with jackhammers to literally cut the concrete out. And they sent these people to the hospital with big chunks of asphalt still glued to their hands. Um, so
I
that was
can't
their,
imagine what it did to their skin.
well, yeah, there's been no report, what the hospital had to do because it wasn't just super glue with a little of aspirin. But here's my question. Germany is among the most, like most European companies, is doing everything they can to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So what did they think they were accomplishing by doing this in Germany? Can you tell me what they thought they were going to accomplish? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
now, if they really wanted to protest where greenhouse gas emissions are increasing dramatically, you know where they should have been, right?
I'm trying to think of another country that's worse. I know that we're doing quite a bit and people don't think we're doing enough.
How about China?
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine if they had gone to Shanghai or Beijing and glued their hands to the road in Shanghai or Beijing? Do you think what would have
Which is a
happened?
communist country.
Communist country. Can you imagine? Do you think you'd ever see those people again, or at least for the next 20
Yeah,
years?
no.
No.
Yeah.
So my question is, why protest in Germany and why not protest in China? And of course, you wouldn't hear from those people for the next 20 years.
I
But
mean, you
if you
look at what those in the countries like Russia and China, what they throw people in jail for.
Yep,
I mean, if you speak a disparaging word, they'll throw you in
that's
jail.
right. So yeah, maybe next time they'll go to Beijing or Shanghai and try that there. Can't wait to see what that happens. All right, want to move on to solar power? Been a great week
Yeah.
for solar power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, last week CBS did a piece touting, and I'm going to put the word success in quotation marks, of large-scale solar power farm in California near the Mojave Desert, which, by the way, is an ideal location for the solar farm. It's a
Mm-hmm.
massive solar array that produces, and this is a huge number, 579 megawatts of power. Of course, that's in the daytime when the sun is shining, and directly overhead in the summer, less in the wintertime and nothing at night. And combined with two other massive solar farms that were mentioned in the story, those three facilities can theoretically produce more than 1,500 megawatts of peak power when the sun is shining directly overhead. But at what cost to consumers? Well, hang on. The story references that the farm was built to meet RPS obligations. Now, I didn't know what an RPS obligation was. So I looked up. You know what RPS stands for?
I do not.
It stands for Renewable Power Standards, which was a California legislative requirement that mandates how much of its power, of how much of a power company's power must be generated from renewable sources. So were these massive solar farms built because they could supply power to California residents cheaper than traditional fossil fuel and nuclear power plants, or because the power companies weren't given a choice? Well, the answer is, by the way, they weren't given a choice. It was, you will build these and you will operate them. Now, they're all regulated monopolies, right? A Public Utilities Commission, and they are more than happy to spend. If the PUC says, we want you to spend $1 billion doing this, the power company salutes and says, yes, yes, sir, happy to do it. Why are they happy to spend the $1 billion?
They're probably getting money to do that.
They're guaranteed a profit on every dollar they spend. Right. So if the Public Utility Commission says, we want you to spend $1 billion, the power companies are more than happy to do that because they are under their regulation, they're guaranteed a profit. So now so let me tell you what's been the result of that mandate to get to create that renewable power. The average price of electricity in the United States is currently 16.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And in some Midwestern states like Colorado, where I used to live, it's as low as 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So how much does electricity cost consumers in Los Angeles, or the supposed beneficiaries of all that free solar power? You want to
I would
guess?
think it would be, well, let's see. I would think it would be less than 10 cents.
How about 27.3 cents per kilowatt hour, which is 238%.
Almost double.
More than double, 238% of the cost of the same electricity in Colorado. Can you imagine 27.3 cents per kilowatt hour?
Why is it so much when it's supposed to be saving them money?
Because the power companies had to spend literally billions of dollars building these solar farms that are not cost effective. And they built them, and then they built the cost of those into their rate structure. And the Public Utility Commission, rubber stamped it and said, yep, we told you to spend the money. Your rate increase is approved. And Los Angeles resident, you can now pay 27.3 cents a kilowatt hour, which is 238% of what somebody in Colorado was paying for their electricity. So what does that translate to for a monthly cost differential to homeowners? Well, a 3-bedroom, 2,500 square foot home with central air conditioning, but no electric vehicle charging station, and still using natural gas for cooking and hot water, will use about 1,500 kilowatt hours of electricity per month during the summer when the air conditioning is running. At the 11.5 cents a kilowatt in Colorado, that would be a monthly electric bill about $172. At the 27.3 cents per kilowatt hour in Los Angeles, that $172 a month jumps to, wait for it, $410 per month, a difference of $238 per month. And so what would the cost of that average homeowner be annually if the government mandates that you can also no longer heat your home and you have to go from gas heat to electric heat? Well, if you take that $238 per month differential and apply it to all 12 months of the year, that would cost the average homeowner in Los Angeles an extra $2,900 per year to power all of their all-electric home if the state had the same percentage of solar power electric that California currently has. So is solar power the bargain that many make it out to be?
Not at all.
Not even close. Not even close. So next somebody tells you that solar provides low-cost power, just have them look at California, what Los Angeles is paying, 27.3%.
I think I'd go back to your nuclear power plant in my basement.
Yep. I can't, I'm saying, by the way, I don't think, after thinking about that, I think what's more likely is going to be community nuclear power plants. You take the existing substations, which every neighborhood has one. I'm sure there's not a substation not far from your house, right?
Yep.
And you put one centralized, instead of being the size of a trash can, probably be the size of a shipping container, and put a shipping container sized nuclear power plant where that substation is, and send that power directly to all the homes in your neighborhood. Because I don't think the Department of Energy would be keen on all that fissionable nuclear power scattered around, because terrorists get a hold of it and make dirty bombs out of it. So I think what you're more likely to see is neighborhood distributed nuclear power stations. And I think in 20 years, maybe not in my lifetime, but certainly in your lifetimes, I think neighborhood nuclear power plants might become a reality. All right. So let me tell you about this story I read about Amazon. And by the way, I have, in fact, placed an order before 10 o'clock and had it delivered to my front steps by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And somebody did an analysis, and they got, insight. From the time now, by the way, not everything from Amazon comes from an Amazon distribution center. Some of the stuff is shipped by a third-party vendor. But a lot of the stuff, and by the way, when you place your order, it'll tell you shipped by a third party.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff Amazon comes from one of their distribution centers. And I happen to live probably 20 miles from a distribution center. And here's how long it takes. From the time you hit the enter button to complete your purchase, on average, your online order has been picked, packed, labeled with your name and address on it, and put on a shelf ready for pickup by a delivery driver in 11 minutes.
Wow.
11 minutes.
Wow.
So if you order something at 9 o'clock in the morning from a distribution center, by 9:15, it's in a box waiting to be picked up by a delivery driver. And I can give you the link to that source if you want to include that in the show notes on the website.
Yeah, I just unfortunately don't live that close. I just don't live in a metro area. So I'm having to wait 24 hours to get my stuff from Amazon.
24 hours, yeah. But even then, it's still ready for pickup in 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, so again, you don't have a delivery driver. So it's still coming from a distribution center, but you don't happen to have a distribution center that is service same day. So anyway, you familiar with a concept called confirmation bias?
Yes, I am.
So what's confirmation bias?
What you think to be true because of that's what I don't know, mainstream media, mainstream popular opinion, what you think to be true is not actually true.
Well, it's just a little further than that. Confirmation bias is because something you hear or read is consistent with something you already believe, you are more willing to accept it without bothering to fact check it. That's confirmation bias. So if I tell you the sky is blue, you're going to believe me without fact checking me, right?
Yep.
But I mean, if I tell you something, if you hate Trump and I tell you something outrageous about Trump, you're probably going to say, yeah, I believe that. You're not going to bother. You're not going to fact check that, right?
Yep.
And if I tell you something about, Biden maybe being a crook and you hate Biden, you're not going to you're just going, yeah, that's what I always thought that about that guy. You're not going to fact check me. So that's confirmation bias. Now, here's a story about confirmation bias, and we talk about perspective that you won't hear on TV. Unless you watch Fox News, you did not hear this story because the mainstream media, CBS, NBC, CBS, did not cover this. Now, we all know who Justice Ketanji Jackson Brown is, right? Well, last month we had the Supreme Court decision on college admissions where they said colleges can no longer take race into account when deciding who gets admitted. You remember that decision?
Yep.
Well, Justice Brown dissented, and with all Supreme Court decisions, you have the majority opinion, and then you have this dissenting opinion. In her dissenting opinion, she wrote the dissenting opinion for the minority. In that opinion, she claimed that Black patients in pain are better served by Black physicians, and that statement was part of the dissenting opinion in the court's case that ended affirmative action. It turns out that she got that belief that statement was included. You know what an amicus brief is?
No.
An amicus brief is a friend of the court. In other words, if there's a court case between party A and party B, and you happen to think that, party A's case, you agree with party A, agree with party B, you are allowed to file what's called an amicus brief, friend of the court, either in support of party A or in support of party B. You can say, hey, I want to throw my 2 cents in. I think party A has a good case, and here's why I believe party A is right, or here's why I believe. So it's called an amicus brief. And it's very, very common in Supreme Courts for interested organizations to file amicus briefs in favor of one side or the other in a Supreme Court case. Well, it turns out that Justice Brown believed that statement that was included in it was a fraudulent statement in a fraudulent amicus. The person who wrote the amicus brief, that was a fraudulent, unsubstantiated claim, and she, without checking, now she has law clerks to check this stuff, she just accepted it as accurate and verifiable, and she cited that ridiculous, unsubstantiated claim in her dissenting opinion, which is now a matter of public record forever and ever and ever. How embarrassing is that?
Yeah, especially when you have a staff like that who can do all the fact checking for you.
Yeah, if I'm gonna quote something, it's something as important as a Supreme Court opinion, I'm going to make damn sure that everything I say has been verified and is correct. But no, she allowed her confirmation bias to have her just believe that and not verify and to cite it in her opinion. Talk about embarrassing. How much time we got left?
You have about 10 minutes.
All right, real quick. So if your state was losing population and had declining tax revenues, and you were the governor in the state legislature, what would be your reaction in the short term to, wow, this year we've got lower tax revenues because we've got businesses left the state and people are moving out. We've got fewer taxpayers, and you're trying to put the budget together. What would your reaction? What would you try to do with your budget?
I mean, I would offer some incentives to bring some of those businesses back in.
But in the short term, that's not going to help you.
In the short term, you got to cut costs somewhere.
Well, that's what a normal person would do. But so let me tell you what California, Massachusetts are doing. Both states are dealing with shrinking populations and declining tax revenues as both businesses and taxpayers continue to flee those states. And those declining tax revenues are continuing to contribute to growing budget deficits in both of those states. So again, the logical response by the legislature and governors would be to cut costs. But what are they doing instead? They're passing a whole slew of new spending bills for things like free community college tuition for nursing students and all students ages 25 and up. In-state tuition and state financial aid for undocumented high school graduates, a permanent universal school meals program for all students, including students whose parents drive matching his and hers BMWs, a pilot program expanding affordable health care coverage to middle-income residents. Now, are any of those are all nice to do things? Are any of those things must-do things?
I think they all need to have a clear understanding of needs versus wants.
Right. Those are nice. Those are things, hey, I want to do this. Wouldn't this be nice? Wouldn't it be great? But trust me, if my neighbors drive his and hers matching BMWs, we don't need to be spending tax dollars to pay for their kids' lunch. They can pay for their own kids' lunch.
And I mean, we need more nurses, so it's great to offer those incentives for nurses. But again, that's a nice to have.
Right, but it's not a must-have.
Not a must-have.
And by the way, and they're going to cover this by pulling money out of some one-time funds. Well, next year and they're going to deplete those emergency one-time reserves. So how are you going to pay for them next year? Because the money you're going to steal this year or borrow, steal, whatever, is not going to be there to fill the gap next year. And here's the analogy that comes to mind. If the brakes on your car failed and you were heading towards a brick wall at 30 miles an hour, instead of pulling on the emergency brake to try to slow the car down, instead of doing that, you decide that stepping on the gas pedal is a much, much better thing to do in that situation. Because in my mind, that's what they're doing. We're heading towards a brick wall. We have declining tax revenues. And instead of trying to reduce costs, we're going to increase spending. To me, that's stepping on the accelerator as you're heading to the brick wall with no brakes. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. You really need to take a hard look at your needs versus wants.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess the era of fiscal responsibility is out the window. It'd be interesting what's going to happen next year when they don't have those one-time cash reserves to dip into to cover the gap deficit. All right, you want to talk about hidden cameras in an Airbnb rental?
Yeah, I hear this is a growing problem or prevalent problem.
Well, last week in Maryland, a young couple who was renting an Airbnb, the husband, by the way, was involved in installing smoke detectors. And after they'd been there for a day or so, he noticed, wow, there's an awful lot of smoke detectors. And I've never seen, there's 2 in the bedroom and there's another one in the bathroom and there's 2 in the, he says, I've never seen so many smoke detectors. And he got suspicious, and this is his business. So he got up on a chair and took the covers off, and guess what? They were cameras. And what really makes this gross is, he said, this is in the interview, he said that he and his wife had sex both on the bed and in the bathroom, where they were clearly visible to those hidden cameras. So, and as you said, this is not the first time you've ever heard a story like this. So if anybody's going to rent an Airbnb, look for hidden cameras. By the way, I know there's things you can buy now that will check for wireless transmitters and whatnot.
Yep. I've heard of electrical outlets, like you mentioned, the fire alarm or the smoke detectors. So, little things on like tchotchkes, I call them, that are like on a shelf, maybe.
Yep, like a little stuffed animal or something. Yep, yeah, absolutely. So there's hidden, like these baby cams, they put them inside of a stuffed animal.
Yep.
So, or maybe a doll on a shelf somewhere. So folks, if you're going to do Airbnb, be careful of,
honestly, I don't think it's just Airbnbs. I mean, you should check this stuff out in a hotel. Alarm clocks, by the way.
Yeah, alarm clocks can do them. So yes, and you're right. Some unscrupulous independent hotel managers have put them in radios and alarm clocks on, on the dresser. So it's not just Airbnb. So be aware that you could be on hidden camera. All right. We're ready to move on to our taxpayer relief shot?
Yep.
Do we have time to do the intro?
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes.
Well, good. All right. For those who haven't heard him before, we call him a taxpayer relief shot because if a thug is arrested, first he gets a court-appointed attorney, which costs the taxpayers money, and then if he gets sent to jail, it's 75 to 80,000 a year to keep the thug in jail. So if you send a thug to jail for 10 years, it's $1 million of taxpayer money. When the good guy or good woman with the gun shoots the thug, you've saved the taxpayers possibly $1 million. And I'll let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explain to you how he views it. Let me go here.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
Now, as much as I like the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, I actually like, should we do the grated cheese or blow him back out of the house one?
Blow him back out of the house.
Here's Sheriff Grady Judd, Polk County, Florida. Here we go.
All right. But we have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
Thank you, Sheriff Grady Judd. All right. And with no further ado, let me play you this one from San Antonio, Texas, where a guy, hang on, I may have lost this. I'm going to have to jump ahead here, where a guy finds his stolen truck. And when he finds it, the thief is sitting in the front seat. And here's what happens to it. Here we go.
But tonight, Police Chief William McManus said the best thing to do is always to call police and wait for them to arrive. Tonight, I spoke with the family of the suspect who was killed, and they said the same thing. Crime tape and shattered glass. Fitness Connection closed early after a shootout in the parking lot.
He was trying to recover his property.
Police say a shopper noticed his vehicle was missing, so he tracked it to another part of South Park Mall. Inside the vehicle were two people, according to police, a man in the driver's seat and a woman in the passenger seat. The owner of the vehicle ordered them out at gunpoint, and that's when the man in the driver's seat pulled out a gun and shot the owner, according to police. The owner returned fire, killing him and injuring the woman.
I think people overall, you're asking me my opinion, have lost confidence in some of our institutions, unfortunately.
Former Bexar County District Attorney and now Defense Attorney Nico LaHood says the owner's actions are justified under two statutes.
Citizens have a right to prevent the consequences of a theft. And in that prevention of consequences, you can use force to prevent a theft. You can display a weapon, and that is considered force, but it's not considered deadly force.
LaHood says the owner also acted in self-defense.
The victim was my brother, and there's two sides to every story.
Jose Garcia says no vehicle is worth a life.
You don't take the law into your own hands. Now my mom, my family, we all have to suffer and just deal with it.
Now remember, he didn't shoot the guy because he was stealing his truck. He shot the guy because the guy shot him.
Yeah.
It's neat the way this relative glosses over. No vehicle is worth it. You're like, well, yeah, well, he didn't shoot him because he stole the guy's truck. He shot him because the guy shot the owner first. That's why he got shot. Anyway, you think that's a good taxpayer relief? Justified?
Yeah, it amazes me that so many of our taxpayer relief shots come from the state of Texas, where do they not learn that Texans really like their guns?
Yeah. Texas is in the top 10 in terms of a household gun ownership. I think I've told you, I've ridden around. I've never been in a pickup truck in Texas, and I've been in a lot of pickup trucks in Texas because we do business down there. I've yet to be in a pickup trucks in Texas where the driver doesn't have at least one gun in the truck. I've told you that, right?
Yeah. I just am amazed that the criminals in Texas aren't smarter knowing that fact.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless you got something to add, I'm about ready to wrap up. Anything you want to add?
No, enjoy this beautiful weather while it lasts. I'm not sure how long it's going to be around.
All right. All right. Well, folks, I thank you for giving up 30 minutes of your day. If you want to send me an email, just send it to joe@jerzee-joe.com. That's J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, jerzee-joe.com. And you'll find some of the links that we talked about when producer Susan gets around to posting them at the website, www.jerzee-joe.com. Just remember to use the R and the Z when you spell Jersey. And with that, producer Susan, I will talk to you next week. You have a good weekend.
Happy August.
Happy August to you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.